What is good? We're talking about the new Trek Fuel EX Gen 6, Trek's do-it-all trail bike, the one-stop shop in their fleet. 140 millimeters of rear suspension with 150 up front. It feels bigger than that though, and I'm excited to share with you my impressions after riding the bike for a few weeks so far, longer review later this year. Now I'm coming from the Stump Jumper, a 2018 2.9er Expert. Loved that bike. Incredible platform, super predictable geometry. There's a reason they've kept that frame pretty much the same outside of the Evo the last few years. Now I wanted to move away from a clevis and yoke design because it can be pretty rough on your rear suspension. Granted, the Trek does have a trunnion mount, but man, non-proprietary rocker, so stiff, so much support. Also, the build kit that comes with the Fuel EX line is pretty nice for the price, and honestly, that's important to me. I need a one-stop shop bike. I don't upgrade mountain bikes every few years. It's like every 5 or 6 years if I'm lucky, because let's be honest, mountain bikes are crazy expensive. I've been riding for almost 20 years, and I am continually shocked at what the higher end is starting to go for, man. It's becoming super unapproachable for some of these build kits. So I needed something that I can keep for a long time, has adjustability and upgrade potential, and the Fuel EX has that. Nice geometry, slack head tube angle, somewhat of a longer reach, like 485, but a platform that I think will be super appealing to a ton of riders, experts, and, beginners alike. So what Trek did is they beefed up the rear end and gave you a lot more adjustability. It comes at 64.5 for the head tube angle, so a nice slack head tube angle, but you can get aftermarket headset cups, basically, that shift that head tube angle 1 degree in either direction, so you can slack it to 63.5 or steepen it up to 65.5. 64.5 is where I'm going to keep it. It feels phenomenal, very capable and stable. You can also do something pretty cool with this bike too. It's got a progressivity bolt in the rear, which changes the leverage curve of the rear shock. So you can even put like a coil shock in here if you wanted to at some point. I've been running it in this video in the normal, less progressive setting, but I will probably be doing the progressive setting for most of my time on this bike. It helps it feel more poppy, more bottom out resistance, and it's a very cool addition to this frame. Plus you have the normal Trek Minnow link thing, and I'm running it in the low setting. So lots of adjustability with this bike, and again, some upgrade potential there, which makes sense. You've got a long chainstay on this bike, which gives you quite a planted feeling. This bike feels stiff, supportive. It's just an overall very nice platform when you get on it, and honestly capable and burly. This bike feels big. So let's talk about climbing first. Trek really steepened the seat tube angle up, making it pretty standard at I think 77.2 for the seat tube angle. What is the effective seat tube angle? Feels good climbing. This thing on flats and little uphills, when you throw the power down, the lack of pedal bob is shocking to me, even in the low setting. So the anti-squat they've got going makes it to where rarely am I ever adjusting the rear shock compression switch into the stiffer or firmer setting, even when climbing, because this thing just does not take away your pedal power into the suspension. I don't know what black magic they're doing, but this thing, you can slam on the pedals and the power just goes down. Part of that I think is because of how stiff and supportive the frame feels, but also it's just a very standard rocker design that they have dialed perfectly here. When you're going up steep stuff, I've never felt like the front wheel is a battle to keep it on the ground. You're in such a good body position that you can really point this thing pretty far up. I'm probably the biggest factor of why it's tough to climb. I mean, yes, they beefed up the back end of the bike, so it does feel kind of heavy in the rear. I've just got to get stronger as a rider, I think, to really feel the capabilities of this thing. I've had a long winter, not a lot of training, and so the only thing that's holding the bike back is me at this point. I will say tight and techie switchbacks do feel like I'm wrestling with the front end a little bit. Most of that I think is the slacker head tube angle. I ran the Stump Jumper in the high setting the whole time I had it, and I don't remember, I think that's 3 or 4 degrees steeper than what, no, I think it's 3 degrees steeper than what this Trek comes on the head tube angle for. So it's probably just a product of what I'm used to on this bike. But yeah, really tight techie switchbacks. You might have to be doing some finagling because it's a big bike. It feels huge. I mean, it's 820 millimeter bars on the large build, which we'll talk about here in a second. So when it comes to descending, again, this bike on paper, 140 in the rear, 150 up front, it feels like a small enduro bike. It does not feel like a 140 mil trail bike. It is super capable, crazy burly, and man, I'm kind of blown away at the confidence it's giving. I have yet to take it on a trail that feels like it's up to the challenge of what this bike is made to just gobble up. That long chainstay, that slack head tube angle, it is so just stuck to the ground. It gives you such a feeling of stability, while it still feels playful. It is a stiff frame. If you watch any of the impressions or reviews of this bike, they will talk about how stiff it feels. I come from a racing background. I like a stiffer bike. I could see, you know, if you don't have the strength for it, it will be a little bit fatiguing, but it's so poppy and playful when it needs to be. It corners like an absolute monster. I can't really wrap my head around it after just 2 weeks of how capable this platform is. And I'm really stoked with just how it feels out the get-go, without a coil in the rear, without really changing hardly anything. Now, I will say I have changed one major thing so far, and that is the tires. The stock tires that come with this thing, I feel like that's probably one of the weaker things of the kit. I'm trying to remember. I think they're the Bontrager SE5 team issues. Not a really like crazy strong compound. They feel a little underspec'd for what this bike is capable for. So up front we have a 2.5 Assegai max grip double down, and in the rear a Minion DHF. I believe it is a Max Terra, also for the double down. A little bit overkill, but I want to, again, like have a pair of tires that's going to work for bike park days and on some beefier trail things. As soon as you throw some, you know, more capable tires on it, it pushes the platform even further. Wow. This bike is planted, man. Be forewarned, like the carbon rims that come on this thing, I'm trying to remember, they're the Bontrager line Elite 30s. Wow, they are really tough to get some double down tires on. I literally had like 3 people at my local bike shop helping me out because I could not get that beat on to save my life. So let's talk about like the first impressions here. Capable. The only complaints I have so far with the bike, and they're not even real complaints, it's just like the learning and the growing pains of a new platform, is, you know, the tires, like I mentioned. It's code R for both the front and rear brakes. The rear brake is a little bit spongier. I maybe need to do a bleed. It might have sat in the factory for a long time, but it, you know, everybody will say it's like, well, the rear brake is that 3 times the length of the brake line kind of thing. You need the code RSC to adjust the bite point. So I might upgrade to an RSC lever on the rear because the bite point is quite a bit further in than the front brake. I could do a bleed to try and push the pistons out, but I'm not like super confident on my brake bleeds just yet. That's the only like real tangible complaint with the cockpit. Now this bike has an integrated bar stem combo. And get this, on the large, the handlebars are 820 millimeters wide. It's ridiculous. Now, I'm tall, I'm like 6'2", and so I like big handlebars, but I've never run anything this big. It feels great so far. I might trim them down to 800, because 820 just feels like ridiculous, but I'm not really used to the whole bar stem combo. The visuals of it are a little bit weird to get used to. It feels a little cross-country. And you kind of lose some of the adjustability out the gate of like the bar roll and stuff that you would get with like a stem and handlebar, like the normal setup. So we'll see. This is the one area where I'm like, I don't know, I might swap this thing over to like a normal set and sell the carbon thing, but it still feels good. Like, I'm not hating on it just yet, just something to get used to. Where I'll leave this initial impressions video off is just stable. This bike feels crazy stable, super capable, lots of adjustability. I think Trek has a real winner on their hands here, and the build kits you usually get with Trek are quite nice for the pricing. I was looking at like the Santa Cruz High Tower, I was looking at some Yetis, and the build kits for those bikes are so astronomically expensive. And I've ridden a High Tower before, I rented one last year. Great bike, no complaints. It's honestly like at this point with the mountain bike scene, bikes are so good across the board compared to like 20 years ago, that it's hard to go wrong. But I really think Trek has totally captured some magic here because initial impressions are off the chart. I'm really excited to see what this bike can do and to try and push myself further with it. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the setup, let me know in the comments below. Appreciate you if you're new to the channel. Subscribe for more, and we'll see you again next time.